First story, when the cornfields began to whisper. The last days of summer in Easton, a small rural town in Indiana, always carried a strange heaviness in the air. The fields, stretching endlessly on both sides of the old county roads, stood tall with golden stalks of corn, their leaves dry and sharp, rattling with every soft breeze. I had lived in Easton all my life, and I knew the sound of those fields like I knew my own heartbeat. But that evening, as the sun sank low, painting the horizon in deep red and orange, the sound seemed wrong, like the corn was breathing. My name is Daniel Harris, and what I am about to tell you happened one late summer evening when I was 17. It was supposed to be a normal night, a drive to my friend Mark's house, maybe a few beers stolen from his father's garage fridge, and then a walk back home through the shortcut that cut across the old Miller farm. But nothing about that night stayed normal. I wish I could forget it. God, I wish I could erase it. The shortcut was something we all used. Parents warned us not to cross the Miller property after sunset, but teenagers don't listen. The barn was half collapsed, the house had been empty for decades, and the stories about it were just small-town ghost tales. People claimed that Mr. Miller, who disappeared back in the 70s, still walked the rows of corn, dragging a rusted scythe, looking for trespassers. It was the kind of story you told around bonfires to scare freshmen. That evening, I left Mark's around 9. The cicadas screamed loud in the humid air, and the dirt path toward the Miller field stretched ahead under a fading moon. I should have stayed on the main road, but my parents would have seen me if they drove by, and I wasn't ready to explain the smell of beer on my breath. So I slipped through the broken wooden fence and into the corn. It was darker inside than I expected. The stalks swayed, brushing against my arms and shoulders, whispering dryly. I walked faster, muttering to myself, trying to drown out the strange rhythm of their movement. That was when I realized the cicadas had gone silent. Only the corn whispered now. I pulled out my phone, but the screen stayed black. Dead. I had charged it at Mark's. I knew I had. My chest tightened. I told myself it was nothing, just my imagination. But then I heard it, the sound of footsteps behind me. Not the soft crunch of my own boots, but heavier, slower, deliberate. "Mark?" I whispered. My voice cracked in the dense air. No answer, just the corn shifting, as though something larger than the wind pushed through. I broke into a jog. The rows all looked the same, but I thought I knew the way. My breath came sharp, loud in my ears. And then, clear as day, I heard a man humming, low, tuneless, right behind me. I spun around. Nothing but the dark rows. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. The whispering of the corn grew louder, overlapping the humming. It didn't sound like one voice anymore. It sounded like many. Soft, urgent, like dozens of mouths pressed against dry leaves trying to speak. I ran. I didn't care where. I just wanted out. The stalks whipped my arms, cutting small lines into my skin, but I didn't stop until the outline of the Miller barn rose in the dark. Its roof sagged, the doors hung crooked, and something inside flickered faintly, like a lantern. I should have turned back. I should have kept running, but my legs carried me to the barn door. I peered inside. The lantern sat on the dirt floor, casting long shadows on the rotting beams, and in those shadows, I saw them. Dozens of figures stood pressed against the walls, their faces pale, eyes black and glassy like corn kernels. Their mouths moved in unison, whispering words I couldn't understand. Every syllable scraped against my ears, crawling down my spine. In the middle of the barn stood a man, tall, thin. His clothes looked decades old, suspenders hanging from his shoulders. His face was hidden by the brim of a wide hat, but in his hands he held a scythe. The blade gleamed, impossibly sharp in the lantern light. He raised his head slowly, and then I saw his eyes, hollow pits filled with moving shadows. "You shouldn't have come," he rasped, though his lips barely moved. His voice seemed to come from the walls, from the figures, from the corn itself. I stumbled back, but the crowd of whispering figures blocked the way. Their hands reached out, cold and stiff, grasping my arms, pulling me forward. I screamed, kicking, thrashing, but they didn't let go. The man raised the scythe high, and the whispering rose to a deafening pitch. Then, darkness. When I woke, it was morning. I was lying in the middle of the dirt path outside the Miller farm. My phone was in my pocket, fully charged. My arms and legs were cut up, but otherwise I was fine. I told myself it had been a nightmare, some drunken hallucination. But when I got home, my mother stared at me, pale. She touched my arm and whispered, "Daniel, where did you get this?" I looked down. Around my wrist was a length of twine, tightly knotted, stained dark red. I pulled at it, but it wouldn't come off. It felt like it had grown into my skin. That was years ago. The twine is still there. It has never loosened. And sometimes, late at night, when the wind carries the smell of corn, I hear them again, the whispers calling my name, promising that one day soon I'll go back to the fields. And this time, I won't come out. Second story, Shadows over Willow Creek. The last days of August always carried a strange weight in Willow Creek, a tiny town nestled in the heart of East Texas. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long, twisted shadows over the dusty roads and wooden porches. I had just returned from college for the summer, expecting nothing more than the usual small-town boredom, friends, and late-night hangouts. But that year, something felt different. The air was heavier, like it carried a secret, and every rustle of leaves seemed to whisper my name. It started on a Thursday evening. The sky was a sickly orange, streaked with dark clouds that didn't promise rain, but something far worse. My friend Tyler insisted we explore the old Miller farm on the outskirts of town. Most people avoided it. Stories of disappearances, strange sounds, and shadows moving where no shadow should be had been whispered for decades. But curiosity, or maybe foolish youth, made us go. The farmhouse was falling apart. Windows broken, doors hanging from rusted hinges, and an overwhelming smell of decay greeted us. I felt a chill even though the air was still warm. Tyler laughed, pretending to be brave, but his hand shook as he held the flashlight. The beam caught something in the barn, a figure, crouched low, unmoving. "Probably just a scarecrow," Tyler whispered. I wanted to believe him. We entered the barn. The smell of rot was unbearable, but there was something else, something metallic, like blood. Then the figure moved. I froze. It wasn't a scarecrow. Its eyes, they glowed faintly, red in the dim light, unblinking. Before I could scream, it darted past us, faster than anything human, disappearing into the shadows of the nearby woods. Tyler bolted, dragging me behind him. We didn't stop until we reached my old Chevy parked near the road. The next night, I couldn't sleep. The wind outside sounded like whispers, voices carrying through the trees. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but then I heard a soft tapping on my window. Slowly, I pulled the curtain aside. There was nothing. Just the yard, empty, quiet. My heart thumped in my chest. I tried to tell myself it was a dream, but then I saw it, an imprint in the dirt, like someone, or something, had walked in a perfect circle around my house. Over the following days, things escalated. Tyler vanished first. One moment he was sitting in my kitchen, laughing at some joke I couldn't remember, and the next he was gone. No note, no car, no sign of struggle, just gone. I reported it, of course. But the sheriff only shook his head, muttering about kids leaving town. I knew better. Something from the farm had followed us, and now it was hunting. I started hearing it at night, the rustle of leaves that shouldn't move, soft footsteps circling my bed, and low growls that seemed to come from the walls themselves. I began leaving my lights on, carrying a baseball bat, checking every corner, every shadow. But it didn't matter. One evening, while walking home from the small grocery store, I felt it watching me from across the street. Its eyes were fixed on me, unblinking, terrifying. I ran, but the feeling of being pursued never left. One night, I finally confronted it. I returned to the Miller farm, alone. Moonlight revealed the ruins in a stark, eerie glow. As I entered the barn, it was waiting, not crouched this time, standing, tall, silent. The red glow of its eyes pierced my soul. I tried to run, but the floorboards gave way beneath me, and I fell into a pit of darkness I hadn't noticed before. When I woke, I was outside, the farmhouse burning in the distance, screaming flames licking the sky. The sheriff's car arrived moments later. He looked at me, horrified, but his expression quickly turned to doubt when he realized the barn had been abandoned for decades. "You shouldn't have been here," he said, but there was something else in his eyes. Fear. I knew I wasn't alone. The thing had followed me. Weeks passed, but sleep never came. Every shadow seemed alive, every breeze carried whispers. And then, one night, I saw it in my reflection. Not behind me, but inside me. Its red eyes staring back from my own. I ran from my room, screaming, but every mirror, every window, every glass surface reflected the same thing. It wasn't hunting me anymore. It had found a way in. And now, as I sit in this motel room, lights blazing, curtains drawn, I hear it moving just outside the door. Not fast this time. Slow, patient, watching. I know it's waiting for me to let my guard down, and I also know there is no escaping it. I will never be free. Willow Creek will never let me go, and neither will it. I write this now because I have to warn anyone who might ever wander near that cursed farm. Don't even think about it. Because once it sees you, once it touches your mind, your reflection becomes its playground. Its eyes will be yours, forever. And as I finish these words, I hear the soft tap on the glass again. It's coming. The end? Or at least what I thought was the end. Third story, Shadows Beneath the Amber Sky. It was the last week of August, when summer was still clinging on with its sticky warmth, but the evenings hinted at something colder creeping in. I remember that night because the sunset looked strange. The whole sky burned in deep orange, almost bloody red, as if the world was on fire. My name is Daniel Carter, and back then, I lived in a small town outside Austin, Texas. I never thought a quiet evening in late summer could turn into the night I would never escape. I was sitting on the porch of my grandfather's old farmhouse, the wooden boards creaking under my chair. The cicadas screamed from the trees, and the air was heavy with the smell of cut grass and soil. My neighbor, Claire, had stopped by earlier, warning me about strange noises she'd heard near the woods. She laughed it off nervously, saying it was probably coyotes. But when she left, I couldn't shake the feeling that her eyes told a different story, like she knew more than she dared to say. That evening, just before the sun disappeared completely, I decided to walk down the dirt road toward the woods. The amber sky painted long shadows across the fields, stretching unnaturally far, like arms reaching. My boots crunched on the gravel, and every step made me feel like I was being followed. I told myself it was just my imagination, the way the light made things look distorted. But the unease only grew heavier the deeper I went. When I reached the tree line, everything went silent. The cicadas stopped. The wind stopped. Even the usual hum of faraway cars on the highway was gone. It was as if the world had swallowed its own voice. I froze, my breath shallow, and then I heard it, a faint whisper. It was so soft I couldn't make out the words, but it came from the dark beneath the trees. "Hello?" I called, my voice trembling. The whisper stopped. For a moment I felt relief, but then a low laugh answered. It was dry, broken, like someone whose throat hadn't been used in years. My stomach dropped. I turned to go back, but the path behind me looked wrong. The road, the fence, the horizon, all of it was gone, swallowed by shadows that hadn't been there seconds before. The only way left was forward, into the woods. My hands shook as I stepped inside. The air was colder, damp, smelling of rot. Branches reached down like claws, scratching my arms as I moved deeper. After what felt like hours, I stumbled upon a clearing. In the middle stood a house, or what was left of one. The walls leaned, the roof sagged, but a faint light flickered from inside. Against all reason, I walked toward it. Something about the light pulled me closer, like a moth drawn to flame. Inside, the air was thick, stale, but warmer than outside. A single oil lamp burned on a crooked table. Around it sat 3 chairs. 2 were occupied. I swear my heart stopped when I saw them. 2 figures, pale as bone, their eyes nothing but hollow pits. They didn't move, didn't breathe, just sat there as if waiting. The 3rd chair scraped against the floor. Slowly, as if pushed by invisible hands, it turned toward me. "Sit," a voice commanded. I wanted to run, but my legs betrayed me. Step by step, I moved to the chair and sat down. The wood was cold beneath me, colder than death itself. The 2 hollow-eyed figures leaned closer, their mouths opening in grotesque smiles. Inside their mouths wasn't darkness, but movement. Worms, insects, crawling things spilling out and dropping onto the table. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. My throat locked up as if something gripped it from the inside. Then I heard it again, the whisper from before, but now it was inside my head. Words clear as knives. You should not have come here. Now you stay." The lamp flickered violently, and for a split second, the room was full of others. Dozens of them. Hollow eyes, rotting smiles, all staring at me. The house groaned, the walls closing in, and the stench of decay filled my lungs. I blacked out. When I opened my eyes, I was back on the porch. The night air was warm again, cicadas screaming as if nothing had happened. I jumped up, breathing hard, drenched in sweat. The road, the fields, the world, all as it should be. But then I noticed something. On the porch table lay an oil lamp, the same crooked one from that house, still burning. And when I looked toward the woods, I saw the shadows waiting, stretching farther, reaching closer. I thought it had been a dream, a hallucination. But last night, Claire didn't come home. This morning, the sheriff found her front door wide open, her kitchen chair pulled back from the table, just like mine. And now, every evening when the sun sets and the sky burns that same bloody amber, I hear the whisper again. Louder, closer, calling my name. And I know the truth now. That night didn't end. I never left that house. I am still sitting there. I always will be. Because once you step beneath the amber sky, you don't come back. Fourth story, the hollow silence of Trinity Fields. The last days of August always carried a strange kind of stillness in my hometown of Trinity, Texas. The air was heavy, swollen with heat that clung to your skin and made every breath feel like it dragged through dust. The cicadas sang louder than usual that summer, their cries like broken alarms echoing in the trees. I had just turned 22, and most of my friends had already left for college or the city, chasing lives bigger than the cracked roads of our small town. I stayed behind. It wasn't supposed to be permanent, just one more summer in the place that had shaped me. One more season working long shifts at the gas station on the edge of Highway 87. But that summer didn't end the way it should have. Instead, it ended with something I still can't explain, something that changed me forever. It all started with the fields. Trinity was surrounded by endless stretches of farmland, golden and brittle under the late August sun. But there was one field people didn't talk about, the one behind the old Miller place. Folks said it hadn't grown a thing in over 30 years. The soil was black and dry, the stalks that did sprout were twisted and dead before they reached a man's knee. And at night, that field had a sound to it. Not the rustle of wind, not the hum of bugs, just a low, hollow silence, like it swallowed every noise that touched it. I never believed in all the talk. Ghost stories were for kids, and Trinity had more than its share. Still, when Danny Reynolds, my best friend since middle school, dared me to walk the edge of that field one night, I agreed. It was the last weekend before he left for Houston. We grabbed a couple of beers, drove out past the Miller property, and parked under the cottonwoods. The moon was thin, barely enough light to see the rows of blackened earth stretching out in front of us. "Looks dead," Danny muttered, tossing his empty can into the weeds. "Yeah," I said, though my throat was tight. "Dead's a good word for it." We walked a few feet in. The soil was softer than it should have been, like stepping on wet clay. My boots sank half an inch every step. The air smelled wrong too, not like dirt or plants, but sour, like something rotten that had been left too long in the sun. That was when I noticed the silence. No cicadas, no crickets, no wind. Even Danny's footsteps seemed to vanish as soon as they left the ground. I opened my mouth to say something, but the sound died in my throat, like it was swallowed up before it could reach my ears. Danny laughed, though it came out strangled. Creepy as hell. I'll give the stories that much. We stayed maybe 5 minutes before turning back, both of us pretending the air wasn't pressing down on our chests. But something followed us. The next night, I woke to a scratching sound outside my window. Not an animal, it was too steady, too deliberate, like fingernails dragging slow across the glass. I shot up in bed, heart slamming in my chest. But when I pulled back the curtain, nothing was there. Just the field in the distance, black and empty under the moonlight. The scratching came again the night after, and the night after that. I stopped sleeping. Danny called me 2 days later, panicked. He said he kept hearing someone whispering his name when he was alone, first at the gas station, then in his own house. He swore he saw shadows moving in the corners of his room, bending like smoke, but when he turned on the light, There was nothing there. "Man, it's that field," he said over the phone, his voice cracking. "We shouldn't have gone in. We woke something up." I wanted to tell him he was crazy, that there was no such thing, but I couldn't, because every night, the scratching got louder, closer, until it felt like whatever it was had already made its way inside. By the end of the week, Danny was gone. His mom called me in tears, saying he never came home after leaving to pack for Houston. They found his car abandoned near the Miller field, doors open, radio still playing static. The ground around it looked disturbed, like it had been dug up by hands or claws. The sheriff's department searched for days, but they never found him. I went back out there the night after they stopped looking. I don't know what I thought I'd find. Maybe proof he'd just run off, maybe some kind of closure. But when I stepped into the field, the silence swallowed me whole again. And then I heard it. My name, whispered low, stretched thin, coming from everywhere at once. I ran, but the field didn't end. No matter how far I moved, the rows of black soil stretched on. I screamed, but the sound died in my throat. The silence crushed me, pressing harder and harder until I fell to my knees. That's when I saw them. Figures, half-formed in the soil, faces pressing up through the dirt, mouths open in soundless screams. Their hands clawed at the surface, trying to break free, but the earth swallowed them back down, one by one. And in the center of them all was Danny. His face was pale, eyes wide and empty, lips moving in a whisper I couldn't hear. He lifted one hand toward me, begging, pleading, but then he sank back under, dragged into the black earth like he had never been there at all. I don't remember how I got home. One moment I was on my knees. The next I was stumbling through my front door, clothes soaked with mud that reeked of rot. That was 2 years ago. The scratching hasn't stopped. Every night, it's louder, closer, until I swear it's just behind my bedroom door. Sometimes I hear Danny's voice, whispering my name like he's waiting for me to come back. Sometimes I dream of the field, endless and black, with hands reaching up through the soil, pulling me down. And I know, one night soon, the silence will finally take me to. Fifth story, when the cicadas went silent. I always thought the end of summer in small-town Texas carried a strange kind of beauty. The long evenings stretched with burnt orange skies, cicadas screaming from the oak trees, and the smell of cut grass rolling in from the fields. That August night felt no different, at least at first. I was 23, working part-time at a feed store in Lufkin, and living in a little rented house on the edge of Pine Grove Road. I remember standing on my porch, the sun dropping behind the tree line, when I noticed something that made me pause. The cicadas, the endless buzzing that had been droning for weeks, suddenly stopped. The silence was so sharp, it felt like the whole world held its breath. At first, I laughed it off. Maybe it was a storm rolling in, or maybe the temperature dropped too quickly. But the stillness pressed against me in a way I couldn't shake. I went back inside, locked the door, and tried to convince myself it was nothing. That's when I saw the figure. Through the thin curtains of my living room window across the field stood a man. Tall, thin, completely still. His face hidden by the darkening light, but I could feel his eyes on me. I told myself it was just a neighbor, some rancher checking his land. But there weren't any ranchers across that field. Just woods, miles and miles of woods. My heart hammered, and every instinct screamed not to look again. But I did, and he was closer. Right at the fence line now, hands dangling too low at his sides, head tilted just a little too far. I grabbed the phone. Dead. No dial tone, just empty static. The air inside my house felt heavy, pressing against my lungs. I backed away from the window, telling myself to breathe, telling myself I was overreacting. Then came the knock. 3 slow, deliberate pounds on the back door. "Hello?" I shouted, trying to sound brave. The word cracked in my throat. Hang on, slept, no answer. Just the sound of those heavy knocks echoing through my kitchen. I ran to the bedroom, fumbled for the baseball bat I kept under the bed, and listened. Silence again. Not even the creak of the house. I thought maybe he'd gone. Maybe it was my mind twisting shadows into monsters. I forced myself back to the kitchen. Bat raised. The back door was wide open. The screen dangled off its hinges like something had shoved it from the outside. The field behind my house was empty, but the woods, The woods seemed darker than I'd ever seen them. Then I heard it, a whisper. My name. Soft, drawn out, coming from the trees. I wanted to run. God, I wanted to get in my truck and drive until the gas tank was dry. But my legs carried me toward the woods, bat clenched so hard my knuckles ached. Every step sank into the dirt with a hollow thud, every breath clouding in the thickening night. The whisper came again, closer this time, my name stretching like it didn't belong to me anymore. And then I saw him, not standing, crawling, his limbs bent wrong, elbows and knees folding backward as he pulled himself from the tree line. His face caught the moonlight, a grin so wide it split the skin at his cheeks, eyes pale and unblinking. I stumbled back, tripping over roots, swinging the bat wildly. He didn't flinch, didn't even blink, just dragged himself closer, bones popping with each unnatural movement. And then the cicadas returned. Their screaming rose so violently it felt like knives in my ears, drowning out my own panicked breath. I don't remember dropping the bat. I don't remember running. The next thing I knew, I was in my truck, headlights cutting across the empty road, tears burning my eyes. I drove until dawn, until I hit the highway out of town, and didn't stop until the tank was nearly empty. When I finally returned the next afternoon, the house was silent. The back door fixed, no sign of anyone ever being there. I thought maybe I dreamed it, maybe exhaustion twisted my mind. But then I noticed the cicadas. Dead. Every single one of them, scattered across the porch and lawn like tiny corpses, their wings torn, their bodies twisted as if something had crushed them from the inside out. I left Pine Grove Road that day and never went back. But sometimes when late summer rolls around and the cicadas start their endless drone, I hear it again. The silence, the whisper of my name, and I know he's still out there, waiting.